Hello, I'm Bones. I write comics, and I am going to be answering a question I got from Wave is a Cat, and I'm going to summarize it because it's a bit long. But the question is, do you have any advice on how to stop yourself from getting sidetracked in your comics, in your story, rather than getting sidetracked in the making it thing, which I do frequently. I frequently get sidetracked. You could say I'm sidetracked right now doing this video. But how do you balance exploring fun new ideas and moving your story forward? I think the first simple solution to this is you probably shouldn't worry too much about being sidetracked when you're doing your first draft. A lot of things can be solved by just simply having multiple drafts and letting yourself get sidetracked. Just exploring the different directions that you can go in. Because you do want some spontaneity, right? Like, I find if I remove so much spontaneity and really focus on an outline, like, I can't inspire myself to get more writing done. Like, I like new things. Novelty excites me. However, there are some general rules when you're someone who likes to follow shiny things. There's some ways to stay on track. There's some ways to make sure that you're exploring things that are relevant to your story. The first one is a classic of mine, and it is to keep your story small. Don't add too many large new elements to things. Don't add bunches of characters. Don't go rolling away in some random direction. I guess that does come across as like, well, in order to not get sidetracked, simply do not get sidetracked. But think about the impact decisions you're making will have. Make sure to not pick things that will completely upend things. Give yourself restrictions, I think, is a better way to phrase this. Go in with some guidelines, you know? Think about your artistic budget. Imagine that you only have enough money to design 5 characters, and money being your time or whatever, you know? Like, you can only hire yourself to make 5 characters for this, and then stick to that. Those kind of restrictions will keep you from going to absurd places, you know? I'm only going to do X number of settings, and that will keep you from going all over the place. And it's a very good idea. There's a reason that a lot of people will tell you to not start with your magnum opus, because your magnum opus is so big and goes in all sorts of directions. It can be super overwhelming. It also takes like a lot of skill to produce something like that. I'm not someone who says you can't write your magnum opus. I'm just saying that working on smaller comics that are less sprawling can be very helpful. But what if you want something sprawling, right? Like, I like to write really big things. I like to write big, epic stories. Lots of stuff happens, but I manage to keep it all on track. Everything flows in a direction. And a lot of the times I don't exactly have like a set idea. A lot of the times I don't go in with like a lot of restrictions like I was talking about. Usually I in fact want to make things as big as possible within reason, but also not sacrifice the story. And doing stories that are restricted will help you hone this ability to stay focused, because you can consider like each element of a larger story to be its own smaller story, knowing how to keep things small, to control the size. I guess not keeping things small, but controlling the size of your story is like a skill that you can learn to do when you know that you can keep stories within your larger work from sprawling and going all over the place. Like, what are some of those skills? When I was first learning to write, I focused a lot on understanding different plot structures, and I specifically learned the MACE method, or LACE method as I call it, which breaks the types of plots into 4 categories. There's location-based plots, where you start in one place, you end in another, or you end in the same place, there and back again type story. There's a answer plot, where a question is asked, and then you find the answer. Then there is a character plot, where a character starts, it's a character arc. You know, a character starts one way, ends another way, or starts one way and learns to accept themselves for the way that they are. It's a character arc. And the last one is an event plot, where the status quo is disrupted and then a new status quo is found at the end. And I know this can confuse a lot of people, but I think the basic thing that you can take away from it is that identify the beginning and end of your plot, all of your plots, because your story is inevitably going to be a whole bunch of different plots, right? Like a character can be on both a journey and a character journey. You need to kind of like swirl those together, braid those nicely together. And while you're doing that, you can start thinking about obstacles, because obstacles are going to be what distract you along the way, because you need obstacles, you need stuff to happen in your story, and you need to go places. It's good to think of like the end of your story, because it's kind of a mirror image of your beginning, and you think about where you're headed, and you want obstacles that make sense for each type of plot. So that's why identifying the type of plot is important, because if you are having a character plot, just purely character focused, the obstacles are going to be things that challenge their sense of self, and they will help them change from the person they are at the beginning to the person that they are at the end. If you are on a journey, a location-based plot where you're trying to reach somewhere, the obstacles are going to be a lot more physical, things that are in the way, things that are stopping them. Whereas like an event plot, it's going to be more disruptions to the status quo, or the things that were caused by the disruption of the status quo. And I think it's a bit, you can kind of be a bit reductive when you think about the four different types of plots, but you want things to match up. When you start following things that don't really match up with your story, that's where you're gonna end up lost and losing the sight of the main thread. Your events, the things that happen, the conflicts that get in the way, shouldn't actually be getting in the way. They are building up something. If your story is like a road trip, like metaphorically speaking, if your story is a road trip, you want to be taking detours that are headed in the right direction. You don't want to go into a detour that is unrelated. And what can help is if your side plots and stories also kind of interweave and pull things together. You want there to be overlap between different stories. You can let's take a character plot and a location plot and think about how they could have a conflict that is both of them. Maybe they are trying to get somewhere and the antagonist stops them. Like they are no longer able to continue down the path that they were expecting to because the antagonist reaches them. And this antagonist is also revealed to be their old best friend. Now they have to like emotionally deal with that and like think about what happened, and they have to regroup and find a new way past. These things layer up together. So when you're looking forward, look at the ends of like your plots, not like the actual ends. Like look at the plot threads in front of you and see where you can start connecting them. Where can you knot them up together and apply pressure and bring things together? As you get closer and closer to the ending, you want to really tighten things up and make them like more punchy, more connected. So that is my advice for staying on track. And like I said, having drafts of your comic, that's going to help you so much more than anything else. Giving yourself a chance to rewrite things and reconfigure things and see what pathways will take you in the wrong places. And it's okay to go into the wrong places sometimes. You'll do it a lot more when you're new because you're just feeling things out, and you don't learn intuition by watching YouTube videos about how to write. Like that is gained by writing. You gain this intuition by writing things, getting critiques on your writing, and retooling things. You just got to learn, you got to make mistakes. I think as artists, it's so easy to be like, oh, I'll erase this or I'll put this aside and try again. Whereas with writing, we just kind of like move forward, and you need to kind of recognize that like each page is its own like little masterpiece, and like each scene could be its own little thing, but there's like a whole thing that is being consumed at once, in a way that pages aren't, you know? Like if you improve with your art along the way while you're making your comic, like that is not as impactful to the experience of your comic as it would be like as you improve with your writing. And that's not to scare you away from writing and to make you feel bad. I have works that I don't exactly love that I created, but I learned from them, and you have to learn from things, and you have to take detours, and you have to sometimes not focus because it's difficult, and you need to learn, and we learn through making mistakes. Yeah, thank you for your question. It's always wonderful to answer them. This is my 9th video in a row. I'm doing great. Thank you for your strength. I think I need more questions from you guys to keep me going. Leave a question below if you have one. If not, it's still fine to just write about what you did in your comic today and hold yourself accountable. And we will all be accountable and get our comics done together. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.